Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I was late. I was reading a little more on Marilyn. It's a book, the book that I recommend, or the only book I really recommend you reading about Marilyn, is by Donald Spoto. He used to be a Catholic theologian. He was a monk. And then he turned a biographer. And his biographies neither demonize nor sensationalize um, the person that he's writing about. I hope you can hear me. Gosh, I didn't put the thing in, and I don't quite see it. Well, anyway, I'll try to speak. And if you can't hear me, please let me know if my voice isn't coming through enough. Let's see. So Marilyn Monroe was always late to everything. They didn't try to be late to this in any way, but somehow every year, I started many years ago, and I would never realize what the date was. But as it turned out, the evening of August 4th to August 5th, I could never sleep. For some reason, I was awake. Constant. I just could not, as if I'd been eating sugar all night. I couldn't sleep. Something said, you cannot sleep, you cannot fall asleep. And then my gal Friday, that's it. Thank you, John Harrison. Thank you. So I guess the flating must be gone now. Oh, here he is. Here's my man Friday. Oh, he's not going to show his face either. Okay, you going to show your face?
No, we should just all be gazing upon your lovely visage.
Okay. Notice that. Oh, okay, a little bit. I figured if I came on alone, then I was going to send you a note saying I'm going to appear alone, so the entire screen will be my cleavage. I thought that would be fun.
Well, we're getting portrait view now. We're getting portrait view, so it's
Oh, okay. All right. So just a tiny bit stuff. But this is the most Marilyn dress I have. I've got other dresses. I got red dresses. I don't have a white dress. I don't know.
Can the record show Felina never showed more cleavage than when she was talking with my friend. Okay.
I don't know what happened. This is the same. This is the same stand. This is the same amount of books. I didn't change it. And I don't know what happened. I don't know how that happened. And I'm going, this is exactly this. All right. Okay, there you go. Now I'll talk.
Like, hello, David.
I have no idea how that happened. I really don't. Never happened before.
The man has a girlfriend. Would
I know, and it wasn't. This has never happened before. I've been on with you before. I've worn this dress before. It never happened before. I never expected it to happen. That was really weird. But anyway, Marilyn always arrived late to everything, partly because she was an insomniac. And she had, and this is going to come into, this is very important when we talk about her death and how she died. She had blackout curtains. They weren't curtains. They were like thick pieces of black cloth that were nailed over her windows. So no light came in because the tiniest bit of light would wake her up. And she had been, her mother was insane. Her mother's name was Gladys, just like Elvis's mother's name was Gladys. And her mother was assigned to a mental hospital. And Marilyn was always afraid that she had an insanity, because insanity can pass on. Some people are insane for different reasons, but she was always afraid of that. That's why she felt it was very important to have an analyst, to have a psychiatrist, because she always wanted to fix herself. So that's the thing that basically killed her, being so dependent on her psychiatrist, who ended up controlling her. She fired in the end. And her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, had control of her post office box, got all her mail, and reported everything to the psychiatrist. Essentially, she was working for the psychiatrist and Marilyn at the same time. Ralph Greenson was the name of her psychiatrist. And so she also had a doctor, Engelberg, I forget his first name. He would come, he would give her youth shots and also the phenobarbital stuff that helped her sleep. So her whole life was completely controlled. Why would this be? Well, going from your mother and never knowing quite who your father was, going into foster home to foster home to foster home, it is said that Marilyn had claimed she was sexually molested in these homes. And some people have claimed that to make herself seem more pathetic or had such a sad life, she said that she was taking on the stories of the other girls in those foster homes. But I kind of, when I look at her, and I know the way she looked when she blossomed, and she blossomed very young. You mean to tell me that the people who got money for taking in children were not fiddling with her, left her alone completely, didn't take advantage of her? Of course they did. My father was a foster child too. His mother moved back to Canada after his father died at 52. And she put the children into foster care instead of an orphanage, where there was an attorney that wanted to adopt my father, but she said no, she didn't want anybody to do it, and then left him into foster homes, who basically beat him severely, and they filled the basement with beds to put the kids in so they can get as much money as possible. And with the grooming gangs in England, I know if you know about that, it's not unheard of that when you're in foster care, that they're going to use you, especially if you are a womanly woman like Marilyn, and very innocent looking, very naive, very innocent, that they're going to use you sexually. So I think that she was, and I think we should believe her because I think it's kind of obvious. She did make some changes to her face to make her face look a little bit better. She had some teeth worked on. She had a chin implant because she didn't think her chin was big enough, and she had some work done on her nose. And she was born blonde, but she turned mousy brown. So it wasn't attractive, but it was very kinky hair. So she eventually lightened it to red, and then she lightened it to blonde, and then she lightened it to platinum. And then when it got to platinum, she said, my hair falls off all the time, falls off in bunches. She said, my hair is like cotton candy. And I went through a Marilyn phase. Every girl kind of goes, I think every girl goes through a Marilyn phase, but I may be bigger because I got practically every book I could find, even books that were written, an awful lot of books. You have to know this when you're sifting through biographies and trying to find what's the truth and what isn't, because there's a lot of books that are written on entertainments that aren't true at all. It's just completely lies. They're written by people who either didn't know them at all whatsoever, or they didn't have access to any of the information, didn't interview anyone, or interviewed the wrong people. But it's a lot of times people just put junk together to sell a book. You put Marilyn's face, you put Elvis's face on the cover of something, they're going to buy it. People are going to buy it. And there's too many out there to see. In America, we don't have laws like in England that you would be in big trouble in England, but it kind of like you can get away with some of that stuff because we had something called freedom of speech, which we kind of don't have anymore. But it's a terrible thing, and people should know, just like websites. Some websites look like, oh, these are good. These people know what they're talking about. It's laid out. It's a good one. You have to know the good ones that tell you the truth compared to the ones that are going to BS you. And sometimes the truth, and then they'll throw a lie in the middle of it, and because everything else is the truth, you're going to believe the lie. So Marilyn, there's a lot of lies that were told about Marilyn. First of all, that she was overweight. She was not overweight at all. She was very tiny. She was petite, about 5 feet. And she had an extreme hourglass figure, which means she had breasts, and then her waist went in, and then went out. Her hips went out like this. And people didn't have figures like that's an extraordinary figure, which made her look bigger. Remember, what's her name? The one, Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell said that in a complaint to someone that called her overweight, she said that Marilyn Monroe was overweight. And so she was the same size as Marilyn Monroe. But little did she know, if you saw the dress sizes of Marilyn, she was maybe a 2 or 4. So she was actually pretty small. So that's a lie. Marilyn also jogged every morning. And when she moved to her house, she bought a house near the beach. She jogged along the beach. And she would lift weights every day because she tried to keep her body toned and young. She also had these, Dr. Engelbert would come, and he would give her youth injections. And either the youth injections were either something to help her nerves or something, she says, to keep her young. And why not? But she was 36 when she died. She wasn't that old. But I remember Nicole Kidman, when she hit 30, or just about 30, the Botox injections just went into overdrive. And you saw that her eyebrows looked like a bat because she was getting too much Botox in her forehead. It was kind of weird looking. But it's like, that young? Like, who gets that old, that young? It's like, what are you eating and what are you doing with your life? But she did everything she could to remain as young as possible, or good looking, because you're a movie star. You've got to. Unless you're going to age gracefully and then take parts for your age, you have to try to be as young as possible. I would suggest never doing plastic surgery and Botox, because many faces in Hollywood have been ruined because of that. So Marilyn would arrive late a lot. And there's a lot of reasons why she would arrive late to the set. And they said that she wasn't good at what she did, and she wasn't smart. And she made everyone on the set very, very upset because she arrived pretty late. And she said that it was very important to take a long time to get ready, to look good. And she spent that time. One of the reasons why, not only why her figure was so sensuous, because it was such an extreme hourglass figure. And she was a 36C. In fact, the exact same bra size as I am. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, but she would say to make herself look beautiful, she used a lot of white highlight on her skin, and she had peach fuzz all over her face, like this very, very, very pale peach fuzz, which some women would shave, but she kept the fuzz because when the light hits it, it made her look hazy and glowy, kind of like when they put Vaseline on the camera lens. There's Barbara Walters used to do interviews with the big stars. The big stars insisted that you put the Vaseline on the lens so everybody looks hazy. If you look hazy, you look younger. But anyway, she had really did have this on, and it looked beautiful. And her hair, you see, in those days, in the 50s, everything was very tight, and everybody's hair moved. That's when Elvis came on the scene. Girls went insane because his hair moved. He left it long on top. And so when he gyrated, the hair would move. And a part of the reason why the girls were screaming is because it was repressed sexuality. That finally they were let free. And something about the hair moving set them free. Just like then the Beatles, of course. And there would be no Beatles if there was no Elvis, because they said they went to a movie, saw an Elvis movie, and saw all the girls screamed every time he came on screen. And they said, that's a good job. And their hair moved. and they would shake it, and the girls would scream. But Marilyn's hair moved. Unlike the other stars that you saw that were heavily lacquered, her hair moved, which made her. Rosalind Russell had a big figure. A lot of them had nice figures, but they were very stiff. And part of that was because you couldn't go over the line, at least not when the cameras were rolling, or at least what wasn't left on the cutting room floor. You had to, you couldn't go over the line. But Marilyn's hair moved, and she was the first, very obvious, which was very strange for the 50s, that they filmed her walking up the stairs in some like the 7-Year Itch. There's so many movies. She's walking up the stairs because she rented an apartment above a man whose wife and kids went camping. And he watches her walk up the stairs, and he's looking right at her behind. And that's all you see as she's walking up the stairs, which is very unusual. And you find that I've known, they say Latinx, but Latino men, Hispanic men love that. And also Italian men love that. And also African American. That is better than this for some reason. Why they showed that in the 50s? Because it was very sexual, and for a lot of men that was considered extremely sexual, even more than the breasts. But Marilyn, let's go back a bit to Marilyn's foster care. She was about to be kicked out of one foster home to go into another foster home. I guarantee you, she endured a lot. And she was alone. You don't have a mother, you don't have a father, you don't have anyone who loves you. And the kids around there that you're sleeping with could hate you. And it is extremely lonely. But I guarantee you she was sexually abused. I'll guarantee that. I believe her when she says that. They thought that it would be better that she got married than going into another foster home. So she married a man named James Doherty. And she was very young, 17, and he was a hunter. And she really felt, she was the type of movie star that was about to turn vegetarian. She really always questioned eating meat. She just didn't like the thought. And he was a hunter, and he came home with a deer on his car, on the back of his trunk. And the deer revived. The deer woke up and the deer revived. And then right in front of her, he strangled the deer to death. And she never got over that. I can imagine that you just relive that over and over again. I can imagine that she relived that kind of anxiety and depression. And you wonder that you put that on top of everything else and worried about if you're insane. And then you start with anxiety, having your anxiety is heightened. Then you say to yourself, am I insane? Am I going to end up like my mother? But, she called her a fairy princess. Once there was a fairy princess, but he certainly didn't treat her like a fairy princess. So soon after she left, and I have many books of Marilyn, and right from the beginning, the people who took pictures of her right from the beginning, and she did road trips with one photographer, and it took wonderful pictures of her. But if you saw the two Marilyns, the different one, the Hollywood Marilyn and this Marilyn, this girl looked like she lived on a farm, took care of little lammies and went on hay rides, because her hair was kinky and like basically light brown at that point. And she did have a wonderful figure, but she didn't have any work done yet, of course. Her teeth, her chin, and her nose were done. I also have heard on good authority that she also had her breasts made a little bigger too. Well, why not? It gets your parts, doesn't it? So Marilyn went from very slow. She went to dancing lessons. She went to acting lessons. And unfortunately, she started down the road. People started to hook on to her because they wanted to control her. They wanted to possess her. They wanted what she had. That kind of, she was luminescent. There wasn't a star out there. There wasn't anybody out there that glowed like she glowed. And I remember watching the 7-Year Itch in June. Back to her birthday. I think it was on TV. I think it was for her birthday. They had Marilyn movies on the day of her birthday, which was June 1st. And in numerology, she's a 1 and a 7, which means a 1, it means you're associated with the sun, and a 7 is considered feminine, the body. And if you're 4, you're the head of 2 nodes of the moon, which all astrological signs are charted from. Well, the body, I'm a double 7. The body is a feminine body because it represents a woman, but the head was a male head. The head rose over the body. So she was whatever you are, whatever the first number is. If you have a 7 as the second number, it intensifies the qualities of the first number, which is a 1. So it makes you extra luminescent. You have this luminescent star quality, and it's more intense than the aura for a double 1, being a 1 and a 7. And I didn't get into astrology, but a Hare Krishna friend of mine pointed me in the direction of numerology. And I have to say, reading it on paper, unlike astrology, which can kind of be all over the place, it was on the money. And another interesting thing is there was a man with those numbers, and he also had a luminescent quality, and he was connected to her in a certain way. His name was John F. Kennedy, who's 1 and a 7. Anyway, I said to myself on that June day, watching the 7-Year Itch, I said, and I looked at the way her hair was styled and her clothes were styled in the particular movie. And I said, nobody glows like that. There's nobody in the world that glows like that. And then I thought, Princess Diana. Oh, thank God she's still alive. And I thought about it. I go, her hair, the way she dressed in the movie, was very similar to the way Princess Diana dressed in her blonde. As if who's ever making her clothes or suggesting that she wore was actually kind of patterning her after Marilyn a bit. And as it turns out, that premonition, and I didn't know Princess Diana's numbers at that moment, but I found them out. They were a 1 and a 7, exactly like Marilyn, exactly like John F. Kennedy. And that very year, in the same month of August, she was killed. And it's when you get these that's weird. And it's true, nobody will glow like her. Nobody will glow like Diana. And nobody will glow like Marilyn. John F. Kennedy. You think about this. And Jody Fayed, who died in the same car accident, was the same age as John F. Kennedy when he died. It's almost a little too weird, isn't it? But it's true. It's terribly true. Anyway, Marilyn, one of her first gigs was, or one of the first movies that she was in, was called O. Henry's Full House. And it was little stories, and she played a courtesan in the turn of the century. And another story in O. Henry's Full House was The Last Sleep. And The Last Sleep was about 2 sisters and a painter who'd never sell his paintings. One shop would buy his paintings just because he felt so sorry for him. But he knew he wasn't good enough. He was And so we always checked in on the two sisters. One of the sisters was in bed dying of tuberculosis, which was also called consumption. And every day she said to her sister, open up the curtains. I want to see the tree. Because it was autumn. She said, when the last leaf falls, I will die. And he heard that. And all of a sudden, one morning, there was a ruckus in the morning. And apparently the artist died overnight. He died outside in the cold. And the sister, she said, you must open up the curtains. I must see if the leaf is still there. And she opened up the curtains and the leaf was still there. That one leaf was still there. And then the sister ran downstairs just to see them taking away the artist. And then she turned her head because it was an alleyway. It was maybe this has a lot to do with Marilyn. So continue. And it's interesting that acting teachers don't know about this story. Because I've told them and they have no idea, have no connection with the story. She turned her head to the alleyway where there's a brick wall and there was the tree. Because behind the tree was a brick wall from the store on the other side of the alley, or the building on the other side of the alley, I should say. And she saw his paint set on the ground, and then she looked up. And she saw that he had painted a leaf on the building, so it looked like it was still hanging from the tree. And then she said, so you were a great artist after all. And they don't, Baz Luhrmann, when he did Moulin Rouge, patterned Satine after Marilyn Monroe. She was a combination. As she sings Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, she was a courtesan. After Marilyn and Madonna mixed together. And in the movie, you'll see when Christian's heart is broken, she tells him she doesn't want him anymore. She wants the Duke because she realized she's dying of consumption, the same thing the sister died of. And all of a sudden, you see Christian's heart break. And that moment, you hear a crack of thunder, and the scene changes for a brief second to a tree, and the last leaf on the tree falling. And I'm going, no, but I can't believe, I said to myself, that's amazing. Baz Luhrmann put all these things together. In the same O. Henry's Full House, she's a courtesan. And the same O. Henry's Full House, there was a girl that was dying of consumption. She ended up living because the leaf was still there. But in this scene, the leaf falls, which means Satine does eventually die. And that was his inspiration. But you see, the sad thing is that she was controlled by too many people. She wanted to be a great actress. She was not satisfied just being glamorous and having people fawn all over her. She wanted to be known for her acting. And another thing that people don't realize about her, that she was an intellectual. She was extremely intelligent. Usually, the more intelligent you are, the more depressed you get. It's kind of like, because you kind of know more things than you should. So that could have contributed to her depression and anxiety. Well, anyway, she went to the Actors Studio. And if you don't know about the Actors Studio, Marlon Brando is said to have come from the Actors Studio, but they say he learned how to act in Canada. He may have never gone to the Actors Studio, but everybody said, oh, it's method acting. They were sure of it because Marlon Brando would go on the set. He did Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway before he did the movie. And every time he did it differently. And that's a sign of a method actor. You make different choices. So it's not boring. It's not the same thing all the time. And the other actors they all had their places and the things that they did every single night. And they were very confused and uncomfortable because he would come on the set and he would do different things like shake the the banister, the spiral staircase, and they had no idea. So they were just, he made everybody uncomfortable. And De Niro is considered a method actor who is only like 1/16th Italian. So, you know, he's really an actor. And then Paul Newman. They'd never seen anyone acting like Paul Newman before, and James Dean, they were method actor. But we're not sure about Brando, though personally, I believe he's the best of the bunch. So Marilyn wanted to go there to the actor's studio. And Paula Strasberg was the wife. And what she did was she said, I'm going to be your acting coach. And she followed her everywhere. And on the set, Marilyn depended on her so greatly because she couldn't do anything Paula didn't want her to do. She told her everything instead of Marilyn deciding for herself and finding her own feelings. And Paula Strasberg, Truman Capote wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's, and he wrote the part of Holly Golightly, who was a courtesan. He wrote it for Marilyn Monroe. But Paula Strasberg didn't want her to play a courtesan. And she had already played a courtesan. It was a shame because we would have that. So he gave it to Audrey Hepburn. Beautiful woman. Her neck is, they say, the beautiful long neck that if you go to Japan, so in different places in the world, they admire certain beauty traits. She had a long neck and they just loved her in Japan for that. But that's sad. That's just too much control. And they say that Marilyn, apart from her being late to the set, she also had very heavy periods. I know nobody wants to hear this. But that's a part of what interfered with her acting. It was to the point, some women, it's to the extent where some girls, and even school, had to go to the hospital, or they just had to miss school. It was that bad. She put in her contract, she got big enough to put in her contract that she didn't have to work at those times. And there was a big affair. She went with Frank Sinatra on the Rat Pack, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford. Forgive me if I forget anybody. And she was never an alcoholic. The highest concentration of alcohol she could ever drink was champagne. And that probably because white wine hit her bloodstream quickly and make you feel like you're drunk very quickly because of the high sugar content and all the bubbles. And they said they saw her leaning over the stage drinking champagne, and they saw blood on her skirt. She wore white. She wore white a lot. And then I told this to my mother, and she said, "What a shame nobody told her. Nobody helped her." And they should. Some woman should have taken her aside. Can you imagine? She's dizzy, kind of out of it because she's drinking champagne, probably on some kind of sedative because she had extreme anxiety. That nobody pulled her aside and protected her. And maybe we were so, I bet, men were uncomfortable, but women were probably so jealous that they just wanted her to look like a fool. And they probably were enjoying it. I can guarantee you that now. I'm bopping around her like a little bit here and a little bit there. Well, her psychiatrist, Ralph Manson, he ended up getting rid of all his clients and just taking her. And he had written a paper about psychiatry and how to deal with your patients. And it was so violent and so controlling that the publisher didn't publish it. Nobody quite realized that he had such out of control anger. And he insisted that she could only do and associate with who he said she could. You hired Eunice Murray to be your caretaker, your housekeeper. because that's it. She was a channel to him all the time. So they knew exactly what to say and exactly what to do and how to control her. And exactly how much phenobarbital to stick her when she needed to knock herself out and go to sleep. And in those days, we have to remember in those days also, they didn't know anything about drug interactions. Now, Marilyn said, there was, I think it came to the forefront in the early 90s. There was some kind of antihistamine they had by prescription, and it interacted with some other drugs, and people were buying from it. And if you had a reaction, you could write the company and get all this money. But back then, they had no idea that anything interacted with anything. So if somebody died, they simply said they overdosed, or they were drug addicts and ended up taking too many drugs. Well, he prescribed enough to her, and including antidepressants that I can't even recognize. Um, in anything that I've read, or some of the new ones come on television, the oldest one is amitriptyline that's still on the market because they use it for fibromyalgia or migraines. But it's an old one. It has really bad side effects. But that's the oldest one. I think it's on the market now. But so the one that she was using is totally off the market. And everything else pretty much is off the market that they gave her, which kind of gives you a hint at what happened to her. Anyway, he went away to Israel with his wife and then to Germany to visit his mother-in-law was sick, and he had to come back early because Marilyn was having a lot of anxiety. And he got so angry at her. See, what happened was he stuck himself. Her last movie was Something's Got to Give, Steve Martin. And he stuck himself in the middle and basically made all her decisions. And so they called him to come back because they said she was out of control. She was very depressed. And so when he came back, he what he said when he saw her. This is a kind of two men in her life we can point to definitely were abusive to her. One, Joe DiMaggio, which she did love. And right before she died, she had made wedding plans that she didn't tell her housekeeper or her psychiatrist of because she was planning on firing both of them. She realized their game. She realized what was happening. And the psychiatrist figured that he could just talk her into coming right back. But she had planned to remarry Joe DiMaggio, and he was the last person at the end that she was still communicating with. Well, when she did the 7-Year Itch, you know that they did that scene. Of course, the scene that you saw with the wind coming up from the subway and blowing her skirt up, that was done in a studio. But what they did was to make to advertise the movie or publicity. They went to New York City and had her stand on one of the grades to do. And what they did was they made her do it over and over and over again. It was take after take after take. And she wore 2 pairs of panties, so nobody would see anything. But she had married an Italian man who expected her basically to become an Italian wife, which when you marry Marilyn Monroe, she's not going to come home and make pasta and pasta fazool and homemade sauce and braciole. And then keep your house. You married a movie star. You married Marilyn Monroe. And then she started dressing a little more humbly when she married him because he didn't want her to dress any other way. Well, after that, he got angrier and angrier with them doing it over and over again. And instead of blaming them and saying, you don't do this to my wife, stop it, you're making a fool out of her, blaming them because they were the ones in control. Marilyn doesn't do what they want. She gets fired. That's it. That's the end of her career. So he should have, why is he blaming her? Well, what happened was the next day she came on the set and her arm and her eyes were all black and blue. She was all swollen. He beat her up real bad. She didn't know she should never go back to him, but she was going to. And he promised, she insisted, because she believed in going to a psychiatrist. She insisted that he go to a psychiatrist to fix himself up, because it was so sure that that was going to work. She believed in it so much. He said that he would do it, but we don't know what would happen. I'm sure he would eventually, because when a man gets in the habit of resorts to beating the wife, it's hard to break themselves of it. Even though eventually, if they go back to the wife they used to beat up, they go back into the habit. So it's always advised to never go back to that manner again. I know this because I've had that experience myself. So her psychiatrist claimed that the reason she had dark circles under her eyes, they saw, and he saw it, and she had trying to put makeup over it. And he said that she told him that she fell down the stairs. And he said he said to the people on the set, it was probably because she was all drugged up and she didn't know what she was doing. That's what happened to her eyes. But as it turned out, he had a violent temper. He was known to have a violent temper, and it was recorded. And he would write about her and the other people that he took care of. And after reading it, you were taken back and saying, this guy hated every single one of his clients because they were taking from him, even though he was taking from them and controlling their lives. He felt they were bothering him. They were taking his time. So they are sure that he had actually hit Marilyn in both eyes. He beat her up. And she would never say that to anyone. And she felt like she was a naughty little girl. She had done something wrong. So she was very quiet about it. So when a woman or anybody just accepts abuse like that and makes excuses, it's because they're used to it. They were abused when they were young. And what happens is you end up, when you get older, finding people. So shouldn't she know that, when somebody hits you, that's bad? Oh, if it happened to her when she was a child, she was a child. But when you grow up, you should just walk out. No, you're used to it. You feel like it's your fault, that you're causing all the havoc. She was causing all the mess in his life because he blamed her for it. He blamed her for everything. He even wrote about it. He was evil. These people were evil. And the doctor who she went to, who he had inject her anytime he wanted, sent this doctor over to inject her when she was on the set. He hired him. So everyone in her life that controlled her closely, every second of her life, she was never free of anyone watching her. And this alone, I would say, would depress me to a point, yeah, you might feel suicidal. But she realized at the end that she was about to fire all these people. And she told her Eunice Murray, she was going to go on vacation. She said, don't come back after vacation. It's all set. And the doctor was sure when she said, I'm done with you, was sure he could talk her. She was stupid enough. He could talk her right back into it. So the blackout curtains. When children are molested, when they're children, when they're molested, they have insomnia, extreme insomnia, because they're molested at night, so they can't sleep. It's not comfortable to sleep. So she had these blackout, which says to me, it paints the picture of someone who was abused and sexually abused. It does. These blackout that weren't curtains, there were these thick burlap felt things they put on all her windows. Imagine, it must have looked horrible. And the night she died, this is the thing that makes it more interesting, that I said that Donald Spoto does not sensationalize nor demonize. He just tries to get at the truth. And he is the first and only biographer that read 25,000 pages of her biography. Not her biography, her medical records. And he even dispelled a horrible lie that Gloria Steinem decided to memorialize before the disclosure of those 25,000 pages of medical records, which really pissed me off. Well, anyway, I'll tell you about that afterwards. So that's a punch of a conclusion, even after she dies. That was another. To me, is a woman who was supposed to be a feminist and uphold women's rights. And when they say something, you believe it. Marilyn always said that she wanted to have a child. The only time you actually saw her looking like she was gaining weight was when she was pregnant, but then she miscarried. Her last miscarriage was with Arthur Miller. You saw in Some Like It Hot, she looked like she had some extra weight, extra bloat. She was actually pregnant, and then she lost a child, which put her into depression. Shortly before she died, she went to Mexico because she was a single mother, even though she was a movie star. Of course, nobody gave her a good reputation. Oh, she was just this blonde bimbo, dumb. So for her to adopt a child was very difficult. So she went down to Mexico to adopt a child down to Mexico, and she was very overwhelmed at the time that she wrote a check for $10,000 for the orphanage, which is a huge amount of money then, absolutely huge, because her life was so incredibly busy, and she was about to marry a man who she knows is abusive. So that's one reason not to adopt a child, and to give her credit for that, and hopefully that money went to those children. Hopefully it did. That's a very sad aspect of her life. But she said she always wanted a child. Always. Can you imagine if she had the right husband and had children? She would be dead. She absolutely would be dead. Well, Marilyn, to Greenspan and Murray, nobody, and Engelberg, the doctors, nobody knew that she was going to remarry Joe DiMaggio. She was fired from Something's Got to Give. And she was fired for all these reasons, a bunch of reasons. And Dean Martin, they wanted to leave Mick. They wanted to, there was Kim Novak were the two they wanted to replace her. And Dean Martin said they just don't fit the part. Only Marilyn does. Dean Martin was a friend that was by her side. Really, when he was a part of the Rat Pack, she was good. I'm surprised she wasn't in the Rat Pack, but they were all guys. Oh no, Shirley MacLaine. She was the only woman in the Rat Pack. She should have been, because she was good friends with Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra gave her a dog, a little poodle, a golden poodle, which he called Moth, short for Mafia, because Frank gave it to her. But she was a big dog lover. And when she was a child, she had a dog named Tippy, who the neighbor shot to death. So that was also something from her childhood. And when I had my little dog Jojo outside, I was always afraid that somebody was going to do that. I don't know why. I was just petrified that I was going to. I mean, why am I so petrified that this is going to happen? I never knew that it happened to Marilyn. And she had a little dog. Those are the same colors. My dog. Yes. So he was a big dog lover, and I forgot who got the dog. They took the dog out as soon as they could, and they found her dead. What happened was her doctor was out of town, and the one that prescribed her sleeping pills, she needed to sleep. So because of that, the doctor she had left prescribed an enema. An enema help her sleep. Now, how do we know pills. They said, oh, there was an empty bottle of pills by her bed, but they found no pill residue in her stomach. She took all those. That was a complete lie. They probably dumped them down the toilet, I'm sure. You don't find it in her system, in her stomach. You don't find it in her blood. That ain't what killed her. The interesting thing, they called the police twice. They think that she died earlier. And when they got there, the police got there, something strange had happened. Eunice Murray was washing the sheets. She had the laundry was going. Why would the laundry go in the middle of the night? Somebody had died. You don't know what she died of yet. You don't tamper with the crime scene. It could be a crime scene. Why was she watching the sheets? Well, the thought that she's probably died about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then the cops came about 4 o'clock in the morning. And she was lying there and naked, because she always slept naked. And Eunice said, which we know is a lie, that Marilyn, she knocked on the door, and Marilyn's door was shut. She was on the telephone all night long, because I saw the light on, and that she was on the telephone all night long. So what I did was I went outside of the house, and I took a stick, a broom, and moved the curtain aside and saw that she was lying there motionless. Well, that's impossible. She had these blackout things on her window that were like an inch thick, immovable, nailed to her windows. That's a lie. Marilyn, her not having to go outside was also a lie. Marilyn had very thick carpeting, very, very hot shag rug. And she had that to absorb noise. So the door was never closed. The door to her room was always open. Why was she washing the sheets? Well, the doctor prescribed an enema with a drug in it to help her sleep. Why do we know that? Well, we know it from, he knows it from the medical records, but the autopsy record showed that her colon was purple, indicated that there was a drug that went directly into her blood system. Now, that might not have killed her, but back then they didn't know about drug interaction. Earlier in the day, she took some medication, probably anti-anxiety, depressed medication. And that kind of medication stays in your liver. And especially the fact that she had taken so many. See, back in those days, there was somebody, typically was a nurse, but everybody called him doc. And when you worked in Hollywood, they gave you wake-up pills and pills to make you fall asleep. So that's why a lot of stars got addicted to pills. They couldn't wake up and they couldn't sleep. So this medication she had taken earlier in the day. And since her liver might not be fully functioning, to have gotten rid of, completely cleaned that medication out of her liver when the drug in the enema was introduced into her system. So this particular drug doesn't go with these two other drugs. So her death was caused by, let's see, having controlling doctors or controlling psychiatrists, controlled every aspect of her life, even the doctor that she went to. And he knew everything, and he totally despised her and everyone else he worked for, including when other clients said that when you went on the couch with him, psychiatrist couch, they called it the couch. You know, the lie back. You'll see it in movies. It's just a couch, kind of a Cleopatra type thing. He would ask them questions specifically about sex that's what he wanted to know, all these sexual details. And he was a sicko, so which means he was a sicko, and all people he decides to covet Marilyn Monroe, get rid of all his other patients, and covet only her, because he was obsessed with sex. He was obsessed with her, and he had so much control over her that in those days, yeah, doctors didn't, neither did they. See, the doctors should have shared that information, what they were taking, but they didn't know about drug interactions. So a lot of her the autopsy report is redacted, but still there. And the fact that there was no residue from the barbiturates they say she took and they say she overdosed on were not in her system. And she was happy. She was happy. She was hired back to Something's Got to Give. She had done, in fact, I have the book somewhere, of the last photography session of Marilyn Monroe. She did photographs on the beach. That none of them were nudes. She even had a heavy sweater on. She was glowing. She was going to get remarried again. Of course, that was going to be a disaster. But she was happy. She was going to get remarried. She had a new contract with Fox. And they fired certain people, hired other people that would work better with her. Dean Martin was going to be by her side and help her out. And so she was going to go back to work. Of course, she would pull in more money than Lee Remick or Kim Novak would any day of the week. So she was happy. She had no reason to commit suicide. And she decided to become independent and take her life into her own hands by getting rid of the people in her life that were controlling her. But unfortunately, it ended a little too late. Before that, she was invited to the Kennedys. Ethel and Robert Kennedy invited her over to celebrate Peter Lawford's birthday. And she was going to go there. And there's a lot of talk about that she probably had some kind of sexual relationship with Robert Kennedy. She did make a couple calls to his office. That's true. They have that logged. And she talked to the secretary, not to him. But Ethel invited her. And if Ethel, she's married to a Kennedy, if Ethel had any idea in her head that her husband was sleeping with Marilyn Monroe, she never would invite her. She considered Marilyn a good friend. And if interviewing people who worked for Robert Kennedy, they said, no, you never would have done that to Ethel. And Donald Spoto, because he did a full-fledged investigation. Of course, this dispels everything, doesn't it? The truth dispels everything. Oh, no, we want to know that the Kennedys did something. We want to know that something dirty went on. Either she was murdered, she committed suicide. It'd be awful if she committed suicide. I mean, it's to look at people who we thought actually commit suicide. Some things were literally accidental overdoses that they had no idea, like Janis Joplin. The guy who gave her heroin that night, which she was off for about a year, and she was looking forward to getting married too. She was looking forward to getting married, and she called her fiance, and her fiance was out partying. She was a little depressed, so she said, "I need a little something to help me sleep." So she called a dealer, and he came, and he gave her heroin for the night. Except what happened that night was 8 people in Hollywood died that night of a heroin overdose. You see, Janis, you expect that the heroin is cut, and it should be cut down to 3%. This particular dealer didn't cut the heroin at all. He literally, and he knew a dealer wants to cut it because it makes it go further and makes more money. This was flat out murder. The heroin was 50%, and it hit her brain immediately. She just wanted it to help her fall asleep. She didn't have a doctor. She didn't have anybody that was going to give her sleeping pills. She didn't want to drink. She didn't want to drink anymore either. She was off of Southern Comfort and all that stuff too. And so 8 people other than her died that night because it was uncut heroin. So we think that, yes, they've had sad lives, but when we as onlookers who have very sad lives and a lot of reasons to be depressed, a lot of reasons to possibly, drink and take drugs and not want to be in this world anymore, right? And then when we have people say, "Oh, well, they're a big star, and they had all that money, and they couldn't cut it in life either. What hope is there for me? I have even less." So it kind of gives the wrong message to people who are depressed when you have these ideas that these people died of overdoses of drugs or because of drugs and not for other reasons, and not for the fact that you didn't realize how happy she was. She was so elated and couldn't wait to go to work the next day. And it was a complete lie. The reason why Eunice was washing those sheets was because, and this is the proof positive that Marilyn did not commit suicide. Earlier, I just want to say the movie Bus Stop, which was an amazing movie. She had such severe anxiety. Don Murray, who was her co-host, said that she would break out into rashes. She got, when they would do intimate scenes, like he would touch her, break out into rashes. She had anxiety when a man was coming after her to touch her. There was some vibe about her that she got from him, because I will get that from some men. And it's because there's a vibe about them that reminds you of someone who's done something very bad to you, which says to me, yes, she has been seriously sexually raped and molested. Something bad has happened to her. And they said that movie was put together in pieces because Paula Strasberg had such control over her that they just got snippet. They would record all or film, like always film back then, film tons of hours of footage, and they sliced it together. And then when you saw that performance, it was magic. But it was all sliced together because she was so dependent on Paula. But people made her dependent on them. They were people who are controlling, they know how to do it. And they know people who are vulnerable, they can tell that they can control them, especially somebody who is abusive and controlling can tell someone who's been abused as a child because it's the way they carry themselves, the way they talk. So they've had this their whole life. So when you've been abused, you're actually more comfortable with an abuser than you would be with somebody who actually allowed you to be free. Because you find comfort in the abuse and you're afraid. You can go now, the door's open. There's no bars on the window, you can leave. No, I'm staying here. Because the bars become unseen. After time of being abused and controlled, the bars are unseen. So that, I wanted to throw that in. That was an amazing performance by her. There was a woman, they've claimed, I'm just going to address a claim that's not true. She worked with a lot of people were her assistants. And there was one woman that was her assistant that happened to be a lesbian. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, she fell in love with Marilyn, obviously. And Marilyn, she became attached to her and basically stalking her. And Marilyn had to let her go. And just really had to let her go because Marilyn really did love men. She really, really did love men. Unfortunately, she found the wrong men, even down to her doctors and psychiatrists. Even wrong person to teach her how to be a method actress. So it leaked, but just because this a person who happens to be homosexual, nothing wrong with that, falls in love with someone who isn't, and they're a star, doesn't mean that the star is bisexual or a lesbian. It just happens. Same thing happened to Elvis, a photographer, and he said he was going to tell on him that he had parties in when he was in Germany. It was going to ruin his career, the whole thing, because Elvis didn't want to have a relationship with him. He wasn't gay, but Elvis was beautiful. I mean, you can see why, but he was so upset by being spurned. And I'm sure there's men out there that you've had to say no to certain people, and they feel very upset when they're spurned. I think they're saying that's to do. Hell hath no fury that a woman scorned, right? That when they're rejected, even if they've been dating somebody for a while, once they're rejected, all of a sudden the other person is the demon. They're the worst person that has ever lived in the world. Or if you never had the relationship and you honestly say, look, I like men, I don't go that way. And that's what happens. It's a way to regain your power because you feel so deflated. You feel so defeated because you fell in love and that person can't love you back. And sometimes it's not because they're, sexually, they just sexually don't go in that direction. It's just because maybe there's no chemistry, there's a lot of reasons that it's nothing to do with you personally. It's just everybody's different. So that night, she was given an enema with a drug that she's never had before. Her colon attests to that. Her forensic, the autopsy report attests to that a drug entered her by enema. Now, Eunice Murray is washing her sheets. Nothing should have been touched because if somebody came in and killed her, or she took some. What drugs did she take? What exactly happened? You have to have everything. The police have to see everything, and they took note of this. This is why Donald Trump knows about it. They took note of this. This was very strange. No sex symbol commits suicide by enema and is found naked in a puddle of their own feces. She did not commit suicide. She didn't commit suicide. Eunice administered the enema. She was cleaning the sheets, obviously, because she didn't want anybody to know she gave her an enema, and she did leaving, I suppose, what she taken and the way she controlled her, and amongst all those other bad things that she did, working for her psychiatrist, the eyes and ears of the psychiatrist, that was, I suppose, one nice thing that she did. Didn't leave her like that. Or maybe it was because she knew she administered a drug and she didn't want to be the one that administered the fatal drug. So she threw the barbiturates and threw the other pills into the toilet. Marilyn never took them, so make it look like Marilyn took them. So it could be that she knew she was the one that killed her, but not intentionally. It wasn't intentional. She was prescribed this. Nobody knew then that this was going to happen. And so things, let's say Marilyn, after she died, all these lies came out about her. That she wasn't smart. She used to write poetry. One poem that she wrote, I feel life coming closer, and all I want to do is die. Being depressed and anxious and having a difficult life like that and trying to make it on her own. being afraid that she might be insane like her mother and be put in an insane asylum. In fact, she was put in the psychiatric ward. She was so depressed that they did in New York City. And the film crew even went in there, and you'll see her covering her face. And people would send her pictures and letters, and she put them all on her door inside her room, the psychiatric hospital, to make her feel better. And then Joe DiMaggio was the one that went in and took her out. So you can see why she married him and fell in love with him. And you kind of see that. She didn't even know that he was such a good baseball player. She had no idea. Somebody suggested dating Joe DiMaggio, and she had no idea. I had a dream once. I woke up from the dream, so I remembered it. And I remembered I was in a dark room, and it was like I was in the psychiatric hospital. It was awful looking. And then I remember walking up to the door and putting my hands on the door and looking at these pictures and letters from people and trying to read them. And as I was trying to read them, I could feel myself being pulled away. And the scene darkened, and I woke up. And I go, what a strange dream to have. And then finding out that Marilyn, I don't know. I know I had a hypnotherapist who's very well studied that I went to help get rid of my migraines. And he did some past life regression with me. And he's I'm sure you were Marilyn. I'm sure you were her. But there could only be one. Just because I do have things that happened to her, there are a lot of things in my life that mimic what happened to her. It could just be a closeness to her, just a closeness to her soul, and possibly just being close to her soul, caring for her, feeling sad for her. I used to have my room. Now it's decorated in Tibetan, early Tibetan, with all these altars. And I do have a picture of her as Lillian Russell, a very rare photo. There's a rare photo shoot she did, Theta Barber, all these famous old actors and actresses. And this was during vaudeville day, and she's got a big hat, and she's riding this bicycle. She looks gorgeous. She's got red curly hair in it, and I've never seen it in a book. I've never seen it anywhere, even on the web. And I bought it at an art gallery on a sidewalk sale. It's a poster, and I kept it inside the cellophane with the cardboard backing. I should have bought them all. I bet there was so much money because I've never seen them anywhere. It's amazing. If you look through her catalog, just look pictures that you've never, to this day, her life must have been taking pictures, getting her pictures taken. One of the things she loved a lot of moisturizer, and she liked to mix her moisturizer with Vaseline. And once she called a photographer up in the middle of the night and said, I want you to take pictures of me not being Monroe, not being happy, but in the park. And I didn't want to wear any makeup. And she wanted to look just as. So she put a little Vaseline on her eyelids and her lips and her cheeks. And it actually brought out, photographed, it actually looked like she had some makeup on. So she did do these little tricks. She did use a lot of white highlighter. And there was another picture of her, but it was in the daytime with Vaseline on her face. And people who knew her said she actually wasn't pretty, to be honest. And people completely can't understand that. And they say after she did the makeup and after she did the persona, she all of a sudden became Marilyn. Remember, there was a very popular model named Chrissy Turlington. I thought she was a very sophisticated kind of model. And those were the days when Steve Crawford and the other one from Germany, with, that the Prince of Monaco dated. They thought she would be the next instead of Princess Grace. Well, after Princess Grace, Princess of Monaco. You know, interesting, Princess Grace, who they suggested that Prince Rainier marry to be Princess of Monroe. They actually suggested Marilyn as well. She was also a candidate to be princess, which most people don't even know that. Claudia Schiffer. Oh my God, I can't believe I remember. But those were the days when then they accepted full figure models for a little while. And those were the days of the supermodel, like the 90s, the early 90s, late 90s, was the era of the supermodel. And I told my mother how beautiful Chrissy Turlington and sophisticated, and she didn't have big boobs or anything. And my mother said, I saw her last night on the Tonight Show, and she was this skinny thing with a small face and a really big nose, and her hair was just hanging there. She wasn't pretty at all. My hairdresser said that yes, you are than models, because models, a lot of them take a lot of heroin and they get really, really skinny. And he said models really aren't beautiful in person. It's the makeup, it's the lighting, they do so much to them to be naturally beautiful in person. And it was a very nice thing for him to say to me. It was a very nice thing to say. So, oh, genius, how could that be? And I go, oh, that's interesting. But they say she Paula Strasberg and Susan Strasberg, New York City. She's in New York City. And Marilyn had, sometimes she would put black wigs on and big sunglasses or like a babushka around her neck or hijab, looked a hijab. And she basically turned Marilyn off. She knew when to turn Marilyn off so people couldn't recognize her. You think, oh, gee, if she had a scarf around her face, of course we'd recognize her. Even if she had a black wig, of course we would recognize her. And she got into the cab. And she says, watch this. And she got into the cab. The cab driver looked behind him, didn't see any Marilyn Monroe. And she said, watch this. She took everything off. And she just, all of a sudden, she just lifted up out of herself. And she put a look on her face, held her head a certain way. And all of a sudden, he said, oh my God, you're Marilyn Monroe. He didn't see it before. She could turn this on, which is totally amazing. My Boy Friday, has there been any good comments or questions that you've been reading in the comment section? If you would like to come on now, unmute your microphone and tell us about that, and we can answer anybody in the comment section if anybody's got questions or comments.
Well, I've been trolling the comment section myself.
Oh, you've been a troll. You haven't been learning. This is education here. You know what? I could find my Marilyn by Donald Spoto book. I haven't read it in so long. So I bought it over Kindle and I went through as quickly as I could to try to remember things. And I said, oh, I'm going to go through this and remember this or read this and this and this. And I just said, forget about it. I just sat here and I just told you just what I remembered. You know, I can trust my memories pretty darn good, huh?
Well,
How about that?
Peace, true to form. Peace always leaves great comments. So he says, interesting anecdote about her. Apparently, she had an affair with Sonny Franzese, mafia guy, and later in with Robert Kennedy. Apparently, she called Sonny's name while in the sack with RFK.
Well, how do we know this is true?
Anyway, not long after, Franzese ended up on federal charges.
I kind of doubt that happened. I doubt she would call out. How out of it do you have to be? If she she would be so enraptured with the fact that she was with a Kennedy. You were a Kennedy, and the Kennedys, they all glowed. They had such charisma that she would call out the name of a mafioso. Come on, even I wouldn't do that. I mean, have you ever done that? Has anyone out there ever called out anyone else's name? If you were sleeping with a Kennedy, would you be thinking about anything but that? About Robert? We're talking about, of course, there was John. He was gorgeous.
Even Elaine Bennis could not.
I mean, that's right. That's right. I mean, see, those are stories. That's why you have to be very careful who you read, and you must know the reputation of the author. And if they have a good reputation, or have like Donald Spoto, he was the one because he was trusted. The man used to be a Catholic theologian, his intellect, but a good person too. That he neither sensationalizes, some make sensationalize, and some demonize. And there's all these books, and I even bought books, the books that I knew that were crap, the people that never just to have the book, for posterity's sake, just to have a Marilyn collection of books, and I knew which ones told the truth. Now, this is the button point. I'm going to get to them. I told you about Gloria Steinem. The Gloria Steinem, the woman could do it all. A woman can do everything a man can do, equal to men, but we're women, and one day women will be great. One day a woman that was born would do something as a woman. They always stressed a woman was intelligent. You must believe when a woman says something, you must believe what she says. And she's not stupid, and you shouldn't contradict her, blah, blah, blah. Well, Marilyn always said she wanted a child. She always said she wanted a child. And she meant it. So Gloria Steinem took her own words and turned it around. If you read the Norman Mailer, I got like 3 copies. The original, there was like 3. I don't know. It was the last photo shoot. I have 3 copies of it, actually. The original copy and newer ones. I don't know why I did that. It was like really cheap. I saw it at Barnes and Noble, so I bought extra. I don't know why. It was Marilyn when I lightened my hair to platinum blonde, and my hairdresser said, "You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this." And he said, "You know the reason why Marilyn's hair was short?" And I said, "Because it was cute and bouncy, and it kind of went with her." No. My hair started to break too. It just stay with your natural colors. And he was right. But anyway, she said, because being a feminist, there's yes, a woman, you must believe what she says, but even higher than the integrity and intelligence of a woman, and saying what she says, she means it, and no means no, all that stuff. Higher above that, because you can kick all these to the curb. Above that is abortion. She said that, and all these books said that 16 to 35 abortions she's had. She had all these abortions because she had sex with all these men. All these abortions, and that's the reason why she never had a child, because she aborted all of them. Well, Donald Spoto, who had read 25,000 pages of her entire medical history. Every time you go in for an operation, she even had, before she died, she had appendectomy. And the last photo shoot, it was the last naked photo shoot she had done. Once she put a scarf in front of her, the photographer wanted that scar in the picture, because another thing she did, she never tanned, because she wanted to keep as glowy as possible with the glowy peachy fuzz thing. He said her skin was so smooth that the incision line, it accentuated the smoothness of her skin. Anyway, every time you go for an operation, you have to say every medical procedure that's ever been done to you. And he had all the records. And what he found out, I said, well, she didn't put it down. No. The doctor, her gynecologist, long time ago, and one of the reasons why she had such painful periods was she had endometriosis all her life. That is when a woman's uterus, the lining, is supposed to shed completely every month. It doesn't. So it builds up like scar tissue, so it's scar, so it's ripply. And so a child, even if a child attaches to it, once that child grows, that's it. You lose the child. She had a medical condition. It wasn't because she had lots of abortions, and that's what. She actually had a diagnosed medical condition that stars didn't talk about. Nobody then talked. You just don't talk about. She's got this. That's why nobody talked that way in the 50s or in the time she was a star. Nobody talked about that any star would have a condition like that. Nobody opened up about such a thing because she was sold as the perfect woman. She was the goddess, the perfect body. And that was something that made her feel miserable too. She was the perfect goddess that had everything, your idea of fertility. Is a picture of Marilyn. And she couldn't carry a child because she had a medical condition, which made her feel, this gave her great sorrow and great depression. So Gloria Steinem, in her love of women and women's rights and intelligence, said, Marilyn, even though she said that she wanted a child, I could get the book out and read it to you, but I've got it memorized enough. Even though she said over and over again she wanted a child, she knew deep down inside she was a child. She was a child that needed a mother, needed to be nurtured. That's why she had to have the abortion. Oh, you flippin' shit. Oh my God. I read that and I just could not believe that. I go, you hypocrite. You absolute hypocrite. And it was after that she wrote that Donald Spoto got a hold of 25,000 pages of her medical condition, diagnosed by every gynecologist she went to, that she had this condition and could not carry a child. She actually made up that lie so she could, what's the word for it? She could not give credence or credentials or back up the reason why women need to have abortions because they might be a child inside. Well, if that's the case, have your tubes tied. Get an IUD if you don't want to take the pill or have the guy wear a thing. Make sure you don't have any diseases and he doesn't have any diseases. But there's so many things that you know what I mean? It's like and know when you're fertile. Know when you're fertile because a woman is only fertile for 36 hours a month. And the egg drops and then disintegrates as time goes by. So if you want to have a child, you figure that out, right? And most women it's not hard to figure out actually. And it's just being responsible, because it's a terrible thing physically for a woman to go through, and mentally a woman never gets over it for the rest of her life. They say that they'll say, oh, it's just a bunch of cells, and oh, it had no soul. In Judaism, the soul comes to the child when the child is born. Judaism doesn't say that. Judaism says, I knew you in the womb. I knew you before you were born. I knew every hair on your head. Come on. So that's the button point. And that's why I'm not a feminist, because I can't buy into that. And I can't use that as an excuse or evidence to bolster having an abortion. I mean, if a woman has an abortion, that doesn't need to be the reason. If this woman said she wanted to have a child, believe her. Believe her. There's a lot of reasons why women can't carry children and they miscarry. And it doesn't have to be because they really actually just had an abortion. You know what I mean? It's like there's a whole range of things. And God forbid a woman has an abortion, or if it's because of reasons that are horrific that she had to do that. I don't want to, I kind of want to be in the lukewarm water part of this. You know what I mean? It's like I do understand that incest and that reliving that. I can understand that, a woman might drive her crazy for the rest of her life, but they say that having that happen, doing that will also, it's that's why it's so important for a woman to know her cycle and go to there's a clinic in every town. Go and make sure that, if you don't want to have a child, there are things. I've heard things, So, yeah, ending it with that, because I want to by doing that, I'm giving Marilyn's voice back. I'm giving a voice back to all the women who said that they couldn't. And it wasn't because they were a child inside and realized they were a child and needed a mother and needed to take care of that child so they wouldn't have an abortion and kill. Even as a child, when I was a child, I couldn't wait to adopt children. I wanted to have a child, and I wanted to adopt all the children that didn't have a home, even though I was a child. And I was going through horrific things with my family. They were doing horrific things to me. But I said to myself, I would be the best mother. I know how to be a good mother. And I know what a child needs. Because either when you get abused, you can become an abuser, like Marilyn could become abusive, or you become the one who's abused. It's always better to choose this one because you just can't do it. But then again, you're abusing yourself. And if you leave, then that person, of course, they'll find somebody else to abuse. They won't be abusing you. They'll find somebody else. But I knew with the imperfections of my own parents, how much a better way to be a better mother and to know what a child is thinking and what they're feeling and when they're alone and what makes them feel alone and isolated and rejected, and because you want your child to be happy and strong and intelligent, and she was intelligent, and you want to completely tell the child every day that they're smart, they're strong, they're beautiful, and they're an asset to this world. Oh, thank God the world has you, because you're going to make a mark on this world that will change things, change things in ways that we could never think of. I mean, there's just so many, I wanted to be loved so much, and I wanted a dog so badly. Because I wanted something to love. First, I wanted a kitty cat. My mother hated cats. All right, then I'll have a dog. I wanted something to love so badly. You really want to love. I can't imagine controlling, being a mother, controlling the child and being abusive to a child. When you say you want a child, so you can say, oh, I'm suffering, or have Munchausen's syndrome. Like, oh, I suffer so much. My child makes me suffer. And then the mother gets all the attention because the little baby is torturing the mother. It's like such a lie. I think it's just so much better to love and so much joy in the thought of making a child, anyone, feel stupid or a drain, or just somebody that you can use. I can imagine the things that Marilyn felt. And I can tell, like these little tells tell me, yeah, she was sexually abused. Yes, she was abused. I mean, these little tells, because I know from my own life and research that I've done on my own and talking to people, other people with these experiences. Yeah, she was. So, Marilyn, let's see, what time is it? I think she died about 2 o'clock in the morning. That's why I wanted to do this late. So she died in the morning of August 5th. So
but she died West Coast time. So
you're the smart one.
that would be
Okay.
5 for us.
It's kind of like West Coast time would be like time of the morning. Nobody would be watching. I kind of wanted it so at least we could get some people watching.
We've done it before.
As you know, she's so 59 years ago, she was still alive now. West Coast time. So God bless you, Marilyn. You were intelligent. You were beautiful. You were a good person. You were generous. She was extremely generous. And Paula Strasberg, she wanted she had a mink stole. Men would give her these gifts and jewels, and she would give them away. Like minks. She really was against dead animals. She really was. And jewelry, she would give away. She was a lot like Elvis, but Elvis was to an extreme, giving to an extreme. And also, any picture she was in, she was paid the least. Genevieve Preferred Bonds, she got like $5,000 out of that picture. Rosalind Russell got, I think, $30,000 or something for the picture. She got the least because they knew they could take advantage of her. So she wasn't even paid a lot of money, but she was very, very generous and a good person. So yes, Marilyn, you're a good person. And to any woman out there who can identify, there's a lot of people, men and women out there that can identify, whether you're straight or gay or transgender, you can identify with Marilyn in many ways. And those of us who've experienced a life like this, and you have to know that you are, doesn't matter what the world told you or what you feel at times, it makes you believe about yourself that you're worthy and you're an asset to this world. And every person is a child of God. And because they're a child of God, God puts you here. And you will make a difference, even though you don't realize, what's my mission? And you become confused. What's my mission? Why am I here for? I must have been here for a reason if I don't know what my mission is. Your mission is to get up every day and smile and be kind, be considerate, listen more, like I should do. Of course, you wouldn't want me to tune in here and just have me sitting here, I'm listening. You know, that would be kind of boring, wouldn't it? But just to do, there's acts of kindness that don't cost a dime. Just opening the door for somebody, letting somebody go in first. I'm going to open the door and let men go in first. Oh, go ahead. It's your turn. You know, to just do those little things. And sometimes a smile, just smiling at somebody with just a warm face. I purposely, when people cross my path, I don't try to look away, because some people turn away and kind of makes you feel bad. It's like, why are you turning away? It's like, instead, I always make sure I turn my head and look at them and smile at them, like, nod at them. Like, what it does is it verifies their existence, and that there's someone that somebody wants to look at. They're worthy of being seen. There's something beautiful about them. There's something about them that made me turn and smile and give that gift of warmth and a smile. Yes, you're worthy. And that it's a small affirmation of someone's existence. And Marilyn looked for that, and she needed that affirmation. Seemed like at the end she was getting it, wasn't she? She got her job back. She was going to remarry DiMaggio, which was not going to turn out well. But she did fire, finally, the people who were controlling her. Things were changing, but it was too late. It was a drug interaction. And everybody wants to hear, oh, the Kennedys came in the night. She knew that Black Book was gone. That's all these things that we think of that they're not a part of the. It's when you read the autopsy report, you get it. It's very clear why she died, and so the Kennedys came in the night and gave her an enema. I don't think so, because they've got the records from the doctor that prescribed the enema and the drug that we know now interacted to the drugs she'd taken earlier in the day that took them in the morning for depression and anxiety. They were still in her liver. So there's no way the Kennedys had anything to do with it. I know that's very deflating to many people because they want to know. But isn't it better that she wasn't murdered? Isn't it better that the Kennedys didn't murder somebody? They were murdered. I don't know if you know this, but they were murdered. Or somebody who murdered them murdered her because she knew too much. But Donald Spoto looked at the logs of RFK and JFK to find if the two of them, because they were men that their days were covered 24 hours a day, what they were doing. They were in the country, out of the country, who they were seeing, what she was doing.
Oh, well, Eisenhower has that missing day, don't forget.
Eisenhower has a missing day.
Yeah.
So maybe he was with Marilyn.
Yeah.
But he looked through all of them, and Bobby, it was impossible for her to have been with Bobby, and Ethel loved her. And either people that Bobby wouldn't have done that to Ethel. He's got this stigma on him that's really not true. And then JFK, he said, I looked through every date and every hour. There was one day, there was X many hours, that the two of them were alone with each other. That she was alone with RFK without anyone else around. So he slept with her once. And of course, she had that. She sang happy birthday to him. And he thanked her for seeing wonderful being sung happy birthday to by such a sweet, wholesome woman. And the dress that she wore was sewn on to her because they wanted it as tight as possible. And it was a nude color, so it matched her skin. And she had crystals hanging from it all over. So she just totally glowed. And they said that she'd been drinking champagne. She was completely out of it. She was really, really depressed when she did that. It was actually pretty sad. But he nonetheless called her husband and appreciated her. And that dress went for, I couldn't afford it. It went for millions, like $15 million. They auctioned off her stuff. And it's a shame that, wouldn't you like to go to a museum and see that dress? See all the things that she owned, so you could just get close to her, be close to the energy, something that touched her, and say, and when somebody passes in our lives that we've loved, of course, people loved her, but they thought that she was killed, murdered, or committed suicide. And isn't it good that it can tell us that the people who we thought committed suicide or even accidentally overdosed didn't? What happened to her was her doctors. She didn't do that. And even Janis Joplin, she thought this was 0.3. She had no idea it was 50. She just wanted to sleep. She was so sad. But she wanted to wake up the next day. She'd been off of drugs for a year, drugs and alcohol for a year, and she was recording Pearl, her the album that was the best album that she'd ever recorded. So she was turning over a whole new leaf. And yeah, I can imagine that there's a lot of people out there that might have taken the route of suicide because they say, well, yeah, you're famous and you're rich and you're beautiful and you got money, and you could still be depressed and unhappy. What hope have I got? And so you pattern your life after them. Some people do that. They love that entertainer or the famous person so much that they pattern their lives after them, and they pattern the death, thinking the way they might have died. And the truth is, these people didn't want to die, had no intention of dying, and it was either somebody else's foul act or just a drug interaction, you know. And Elvis is another story which we will talk about if you are going to come back. We're going to have the candlelight vigil here because we can't be at Graceland. And we will talk to you about what actually killed Elvis. And it's more interesting than you could ever imagine, and has nothing to do with dying of drugs. Nothing at all. So, did you want to say anything? Is there anything that needs to be said from that comment section we need to read off?
Oh, well, Peace had to dip out early, but we always love having you, Peace. Well, I've barely been in this conversation. But yeah, so
you're still here. You're still here.
And yeah, Mad Dog and I were just talking about Heidi Klum for a while there.
Oh, really?
It's funny. I remember there was a hidden camera TV show where it was called like, "Hey, aren't you that person?" This is back when I actually used to watch TV. But they had Heidi Klum, and so they would put these big celebrities in regular situations, so people would like do a double take. So they put Heidi Klum to work in a pizza shop, and a guy walked in, so they just deglammed her. She just looked like a pretty girl. You not anything really extraordinary, but yeah, the guy went in there and was like, "Hey, you look kind of familiar." But yeah, it's just kind of funny the way they do that sort of Hollywood magic to make someone look sort of ethereal when they could just be the pretty girl who sits behind you in math class,
That's amazing. That's very deep thought.
Thank you. I'm capable. I'm capable of them every now and then. Now, you were talking about fatal insomnia medication. That seems to have been a big thing. Well, obviously, we can draw parallels to Michael Jackson. Obviously, he was given the propofol or something.
Unbelievable.
There was a classic Golden Age Hollywood director who died the same way. He had his own personal doctor, and you know that's never good when the doctor does house calls and gives you medicine to
sure, they have control. You have the most patient in the world. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big problem in Hollywood when people don't go to general practitioners. They have these doctors who do house calls, and it's completely uncontrolled. Yeah.
And they know all your little secrets, and they love it. That's the control they have over you.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep you, and they make you dependent on them. That's what Marilyn's doctors did, and the people around her did. They made her completely dependent on them.
Well, we saw that a decade later with like Brian Wilson. Well, they say, well, this guy has a lot of money. We can just he'll be the golden goose. We'll just drain money out of him by controlling him. And again, we see it with Britney Spears nowadays. But yeah, I could see her going sort of that Brian Wilson route, where it basically have a decade of her life basically being controlled by this nutty psychiatrist.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, thinking about Michael Jackson, I'm wondering if, because when he died, we had no idea what Elvis actually really died of, why he had to take the medication that he did take, and it wasn't as much as we even dreamed that he took. Michael Jackson, you notice in his dance routines, you see that when he goes up on his 2 feet, he's got white socks, black shoes, dark pants. Elvis came out and he did Hound Dog, which was written by Lieber and Stoller. I know they wrote it for Big Mama Willa Mae Thornton, who also wrote Ball and Chain, which Janis Joplin sang, but the two sound completely different. He was singing Hound Dog. When he was singing Hound Dog, he went up on his feet like this. And that Michael Jackson mimicked it. It was Paula Abdul that would choreograph. His dance routines were not like Elvis didn't do choreograph. He just did what he felt. And then basically he was told you can't dance like that anymore because it's, bad, So he took that seriously, and then he went more in another direction because he didn't want to be pushing people in a sexual direction.
He couldn't help
it. Well, yeah, he couldn't help, but you notice how he changed? He did,
Yeah.
And after his mother died, he changed. Absolutely changed. And there's lies about women within too. I can't. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of seeing these videos of people reading, either making up things or reading books that are totally made up. And that's what we're going to quash. We're going to quash the lies. For the night that he died, we're going to quash all those lies. But I'm wondering, because Michael Jackson, he married Lisa Marie. He was a big fan of Elvis. Elvis was a big influence on him. That's why he incorporated Elvis's routines in. And he said he wouldn't come on stage. He said, you announce me as the king of pop, otherwise I'm not coming on stage. So he could be the king of rock, so he's the king of pop, which is actually, the pop includes any music that's popular. That's actually a bigger name. But he married Lisa Marie. He really had a fixation with Elvis. And I wonder, as I was saying, that how many people out there who love these big people, these big famous people, and they see that they had everything, yet they died of drugs or suicide or something like that. I wonder if that's why he went down that road himself, and then got to a point and said, I'm going to go the way Elvis went. And that isn't the way Elvis went. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the depression and the isolation of being a big star. And, Elvis, obviously lived by night and slept during the daytime because he performed at night. So he had to sleep during the daytime. And obviously, we'll talk about Elvis. But he did, but the picture that they painted of him and all the books that were written about him never delved into his medical conditions. Nobody knew really what was going on from the day he was born, And so Michael Jackson is certainly, the doctors giving him drugs, helping him sleep. He probably was sexually molested as a child. Probably was a child star. It's a good chance that happened. We'll just say it's a higher than, we don't know 100%, but pretty high. Maybe he had trouble sleeping too. And he wanted to go out the same way Elvis did. And that's kind of sad, because if he knew that, see, if Elvis were alive, he'd be his best friend. Elvis would have.
Yeah. My understanding is that Michael Jackson's attitude was that he was right on the cusp of a redemption tour, because obviously the 90s and early 2000s weren't very kind to him. So he was not. I'm sure he was not in any had any motivation to commit suicide. I think he was eyeing redemption at that point.
He was eyeing it, but he was also downing a lot of medication.
Yeah.
And at that point, we knew what these medications did. we knew that if you took too much, we knew what they did. There was more. We were much more aware of drug interactions at that time when he died. It wasn't that long ago, really. I remember. I remember when it happened. A woman from Ghana told me. I worked with her, and she couldn't believe. Oh my God! It's just like, what? Same day John Ritter died from Three's Company. Nobody remembers that, and Farrah Fawcett died. No, John Ritter died the same day that Johnny Cash died, and Farrah Fawcett died in Charlie's Angels the same day Michael Jackson died. And so their deaths were completely forgotten. It's like totally off the headlines. It's kind of sad in a way. But I'm kind of being depressed, pretty lonely. He had those children, but I can imagine, he had people taking care of the children. I don't think he molested those children. I don't think he harmed those children. His 3 children, they seem to be okay. I think it was probably as loving as he could possibly be to them. But the drugs were up. The doctor was really upping those drugs on
Yeah.
And so you get kind of foggy. And if you're foggy, even if you take a sleeping pill and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're really foggy, oh, did I take, my antihistamine? Do I need to take another one? Because I'm all stuffed up. And then every 5 minutes you're taking the same antihistamine. It's probably got acetaminophen in it. And and you have no idea. I mean, very.
That sounds like every famous person's autopsy. It's always a cocktail of drugs. Maybe one is illicit, and then you have like antihistamines and all these other things.
Because acetaminophen kills your liver. That can like 5. That's why all of a sudden in medications, if you go to the doctor or if you're on medication, they're putting acetaminophen in everything you go to the pharmacy. It's all acetaminophen. And even when you get prescription medication, remember I had one that was for migraines and had acetaminophen in it. And they lowered the amount from 500 to 325 because 500 can do real damage. And then they took it totally off the market completely, which I don't understand. But maybe they take the acetaminophen out of it completely. But I don't know. I think I'm just looking at it and saying his life was kind of patterned after Elvis's, like dancing like him, dressing like, and then Elvis wore the collars. Not people say this because he thought he had a skinny neck. He never wore those collars until he came back in the 70s. They designed his outfits so he would look like a king, like French Renaissance, like King Louis the 14th or something. Those kinds of, and with the long sleeves and bell bottoms, and so that was a mix. And so when Michael Jackson got all dressed up, he was dressed like a prince or like with the rhinestones, and that was like let's see, some things that you will see a king wear, and they wear different outfits, and they have all the medals and stuff.
I have to think of the Chris Rock routine where he talks about the Martin Bashir interview, and he says he comes out looking like Captain Crunch.
Oh my God, that's right. Yeah, and when he went to the trial, and all his fans were outside banging on the cars saying, Michael's innocent. And he went to the trial dressed in his pajamas. And I'm wondering, it's like, was that drugs? Was that or was it to basically say I'm innocent? I'm like a child of myself. What does that tell? Of course, the jury, absolutely. You've got a mob of people outside screaming, like, free Michael's innocent. There's just no way anything's going to happen. But I almost like to give a signal to the court that I'm a child. I'm wearing my pajamas. I just got out of bed. I'm innocent. I didn't do this.
Yeah, well, if they're doing a plea deal, a lot of times they'll, if they say, well, he's doing an insanity defense, and they'll come in with mismatched colors and polka dots and stuff, and they do that crap,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So
there's a plea deal with Michael Jackson's case.
yeah, we don't know that, like, mentally, was he always on drugs? That was always a little off.
They say with the
downhill.
Pepsi commercial, that he was put on painkillers back in the late 80s.
Yeah, because his hair was burned. His hair caught fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was with him for the last 20 years. Yeah.
Well, there has to be something more, because that pain eventually dissipates. It has to be something more that's going on. Of course, if you get into Prince, then Prince he would jump off high levels on the stage playing the guitar, and he would land very hard. And Prince was very tiny.
Yeah.
Very short, very tiny, very weak bones. And so he had a complete hip replacement when he was pretty young. So that got him addicted to painkillers, very heavy painkillers that he needed. He was in a lot of pain every time he did a concert. He was in a lot of pain, and he died of prescription medication. But of course, when you take prescription painkillers, the dose keeps upping, because your body gets used to it, and it stops working. And then you're supposed to stop taking it for a while, and then take something else, and then maybe go back to it. But instead, he keeps upping it, even though you don't feel it. It's still going to kill you.
Yeah.
And found out that he was being prescribed that was it more than one doctor, or was it from peddlers? I think he did go to the pharmacy to get.
Well, we actually have photos of him riding his bicycle to the Walgreens, if you remember, which is a very un-Prince-like thing. But yeah, apparently Prince would just ride his bicycle to Walgreens, and so those are from his last days. Which
you can't ride the bicycle after you take that medication, but yeah, you can imagine he probably did have arthritis all over his whole body. He probably was wearing away all of those, and it's like my body, from the heavy work I've done.
Yeah,
and my body's wearing away, and because I've always I didn't go to school, so I had jobs that had heavy labor, and they expected you to do it. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, with Prince, I mean, he always had this reputation of sort of being kind of religious, and we kind of always assumed he was dedicated to clean living.
He was a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't realize that the guy who started that went to jail for being a pimp, and he wanted to make money, so he took the Bible and actually rewrote it. So when he sends his people out, the people go out, they say, "This is what the Bible says. See here, it says it right here, and this is the Bible." They don't know that the Bible is rewritten. All these people are totally brainwashed. So yeah, he voted.
Michael Jackson too.
The Republican. Oh yeah, he was a Jehovah's Witness. That's right. But I know they said that upon Prince's death, that he was very religious and a strict Republican. Voted Republican right down the line. Because he was against, all the Democrat, liberal kind of, probably against abortion.
Yeah.
That's probably it. I remember 2 Jehovah's Witnesses coming to my door, and I said, "Oh, I believe in God and Jesus." "Well, you don't have to believe in Jesus," they said. I was like, "Oh my God, it's Jehovah. It's God. Jesus is secondary. Jesus is not God incarnated into a human body. To them, he's like second, like Mormonism. Jesus is not God's son. Jesus' brother is the devil. It's a whole different thing, and he didn't rewrite the Bible, but he wrote an appendix that doesn't make any sense at all. You know, the Book of Mormon is like, I picked it up and I read it for like a minute or 3 minutes. I go, I could have written this, just a bunch of these, thous, and dus. You know, it's like you just write anything and just put the these and the thous. And it sounds like, why would you write something that sounded like in the 18th century that sounded like the 16th century when the King James version was written? That's how they talked then.
Yeah, Edwardian English, yes.
It made no sense at all.
Ian Randall says Prince was a great guitarist, but a crap songwriter and performer. Now, if David Shelton was here right now, he would be in a high pitch of dudgeon, because that would be blasphemy to David. So you can bring that up again on the Elvis stream when David will be here. And
okay, that's right. You know, I was almost asked. What did he say? Prince was great. Oh no! I say no. He doesn't like when dogs. Oh, nothing compares to you. That was, you know. Of course, we remember Cyanide O'Connor singing that. We don't think of.
Yeah.
Think of Cyanide O'Connor or Sinbad O'Connor.
Sinead.
Oh, I always get that name wrong. Sinead. She did a good job. She did a good job. Unfortunately, she won't be singing any more songs anymore. She's not dead though. Give her a medal. Put a medal on her jacket for that one. But yeah, I would just, you know.
My favorite Prince song is a kind of sort of a deep cut. It's from the 90s. It's called Seven, and it's a very Prince song. Yeah. You probably never heard it, but yeah, it's a very interesting song with very good production and very intriguing lyrics that are all it sounds like the Book of Revelation.
So he's kind of really, they said he's written and recorded songs that will go on for another 50 years, will be released for another 50 years.
Well, yes.
He lived in a recording studio, and that's all he did. He played 26 instruments.
Yes.
He was unbelievable. So I guess you would have to look at his entire canon of songs before you say, this is bad, or he is bad. Oh, by the way, think you're Prince?
Purple Man Bad.
Purple Man Bad. Oh, that's.
I know Kevin Smith is a dirty word these days.
Oh,
please.
Ian Randall is going to hate me.
Oh.
And do you see the price? See if we get the price up there.
I can't read that.
$3.89. Even see the cellophane, everything is on there. Purple Rain, and what's the backside of Purple Rain? God. A song called God. But this is, let's see, we'll look at this. Limited edition, pressed on purple vinyl. Ba, 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 ba. There you go. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that cool?
Wait a second.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, you're going to outdo me? You're not going to outdo me. He's going to try to outdo me. There's nothing better than purple. Purple is the best. The world should be purple. I love purple. That was my favorite color when I was born. That was my favorite color as a child, violet, the color of violets. And I was born when the violets were growing in the grass. And I didn't see them, you know, because I was a baby, my eyes were closed. But that was my favorite color, that kind of violet, which is the highest chakra, they say. You're connected to God, that color. And he loved purple. Elvis loved purple. The other thing, he loved Elvis too. And his hair was like an 80s version of Elvis's hair. And the way he dressed was like an 80s version of Elvis's version of wearing those king outfits. Oh, that's the album. So that's the picture on the album?
Yes.
How old is that?
I don't know.
Did you get that over eBay?
No, I bought it from a record store. I bought it from my friend Patrick, who works at a record store here in Greensboro.
So is it from the 80s or is it a remake?
I think it's a more recent issue.
Mine is original. That's why mine says $3.89. I still have the sticker on it. Talk about, I know how to get my hands on that.
Felina and I
are primo. I don't buy the remakes. I buy the originals.
We're going to do a record crate sort of.
Well, there's one more that is like you'll have to run to the bathroom. I swear to God, you'll pee in your pants when I show it to you. It's a record that nobody can get. It's definitely not being printed because probably nobody wanted it. So look at my purple lights went out. There we go. Purple lights.
Oh, I got my Christmas lights back around my door.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I stepped in my things when my purple lights went out. See that purple rain? Yeah, I'm totally in the purple. Totally. But Elvis's favorite color was purple. His mother's favorite color was purple. Yeah, and they had an obsession with Egypt too. They really something about Egypt. But you can see, you look for Prince, you look at Michael Jackson, and you see when you see Elvis, and then you see that they're actually bringing back. And the 80s, first I thought that the 80s was inspired by David Bowie, which I think it was partly. But when you looked at the jackets and the slick back hair and the hair, it's Elvis. The 80s was a revival of the 50s.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. He was the inspiration. And then I think and you take that and you mix David Bowie in with all the electric colors, you have the 80s. And also the kind of music David Bowie produced too. He kind of went, it kind of went into another direction, it kind of expanded.
Yeah, new wave synthesizer, yeah.
Yeah, things just grew. But of course we could talk about the history of rock and roll forever. And whose fault it really was that black music stopped being played in the 60s. It wasn't Elvis's fault. Today was Rob sent me a thing saying that what was the name?
The Babylon Bee.
Babylon Bee. How many times have I said, imagine communism? It is, oh my God, and then so they write a song about imagine communism. And they rewrite, and it's brilliant. This is the most brilliant thing you've ever done. I said it first. I've been talking about it longer than anybody, and I don't get any views.
I'm sorry, but Forrest Gump, a mentally challenged man, beat both of you to the punch by about a quarter.
What did he say? What did he say?
When he was on the Dick Cavett show, he's like the people in China, they never go to church. Remember they
I know, but that's not imagine. We're talking about John Lennon his deception on the hippies, because the hippies took the drugs. And then the hippies taught their kids, and then the hippies, and then it went so. And so the kids today, everything is reimagined, and it's about Marxism because we have a revival of Marxism in this country. So it has nothing to do with people in China never go to church. What does that have to do with imagine? Reimagine. To now is reimagine everything. Imagine communism. I said it first.
Well,
the Babylon Bee gets the views.
Well, the Babylon Bee did a very good job, so I recommend.
Oh, I know, not as good a job as I could have done. I swear to God, those lyrics were just lame. I could have done such a better job.
We have never heard you sing once. You sang.
I was almost going to sing something.
We never heard you sing.
I was singing something today. What song was I singing today? Oh, jeez. Was it a Don McLean song? I forget what it was. Do you know that And I Love You So was written by Don McLean, but Perry Como made it a hit? And it's weird. Elvis sang it too, and so did Don McLean. And you know what? I hate to say this because I heard Perry Como's version first. I like Perry Como.
Yeah. Here's a bizarro fact. Don McLean's Vincent was Tupac Shakur's favorite song, and when Tupac Shakur was dying of his bullet wounds, he had them play Vincent as the last thing he heard.
Oh my God, how moving! Because Vincent Van Gogh died of a gunshot. Went to the field and died of a gunshot.
There talk about interesting deaths. There are a lot of disputed histories surrounding Vincent Van Gogh's death too. I think there was a cowboy kid in his neighborhood who modeled himself after Buffalo Bill, and he shot Vincent Van Gogh by accident. But Vincent Van Gogh didn't want to destroy this boy's life when he was still so young, so he made it seem like a suicide.
Oh, I know that he had a problem with his eyes, seeing everything he saw because he had a defect in his eyes, which is his defect turned out to be a gift for all of us. Everything had a halo around it.
Yeah.
So the starry night, all those swirls. It isn't like the imagination of the Impressionist. It's not. It's exact. He was painting what he saw, which actually takes the magic out of it. But then again, it gives you can have some kind of disability of some kind, something imperfect. But that imperfection created such beauty.
Yeah.
It's not imperfection. I thought that was and the reason why he cut off his ear is because there was a girl that he fell in love with, and she didn't have an ear for some reason, and she lived in like the next town over. And what he did was to make her feel not like she stuck out, because she was like defective, and people made fun of her. So he said, "Look, I cut off my ear too."
Yeah.
It was a kind act. It wasn't that I'm in love with you and I sent my cut ear to you. It wasn't crazy. Like some people are absolutely insane, but I think history, people write lies, and it's really nice when you find out the truth, because the true story is, the first story is insane. The second story is beautiful.
Mm.
I mean, and it makes the song Vincent even more beautiful, even though, and that's right, he'd rather have people think that he shot himself than put this young man in prison by shooting him by accident. He was a beautiful soul. This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. That's right, he was, wasn't it? It's like it rings, even though the stories are different. And when he wrote it believing other things, believing these tales that were actually really insane. But if he knew the truth, he probably still would have written Vincent.
Yeah.
That song would have. God, the first time I heard that was the ballet guild I belonged to. It was in the older dancer. He was an older dancer that I remember the choreographed. I don't remember her name, but the girl was dancing on the stage, and she would show slideshow of the paintings of Vincent Van Gogh. And it was interesting because this particular theater was fifth oldest theater in the country. It was built in 1895, and in it you've got Van Gogh and you've got Toulouse-Lautrec, and that's the theater that I saw Moulin Rouge first.
Mm-hmm.
So when it opens, you've got this red curtain opening, and it's the same time period as the Moulin Rouge. So it's like literally and then you look at the prints of Toulouse-Lautrec that have been there for years and years and years. I go, this is unreal. It's like I was there. Like you enter the movie. That's what Baz Luhrmann said, that he has the beginning move very, very fast because he wants you to concentrate very hard so you can catch everything. So when it slows down, you've entered the movie. It was absolute genius. Absolute genius. And he loved Marilyn. That's why he incorporated her into Moulin Rouge, using one of the first movies that she'd ever done, Henry's Full House. You've learned about theater. I mean, you learned a lot about theater watching this, as well as Marilyn, like the history of theater and the inspiration that Marilyn has to this day. She will always inspire. Even that one that died of drugs. Forget her name. She did Guess Jeans. Nicole Smith. Everybody is like Marilyn is the one,
Yeah.
Or the one who dated Anton LaVey, and she was a big blonde bombshell. And they thought her head
Mansfield.
They thought her head came off, but it didn't. It was her wig that came off. They died in a car crash together, but the wig got caught onto something. And when the reporters went there, they saw the hair, and they thought her head had come off, but that didn't happen. And it's good to know that. That's a good button for this show. So yeah. So these are people who live to the end of time. And Prince was part black, but he was part white. He was half white. He was part Italian too. That's why he was Italian. People look at him and say that, oh, he must be a Latino. He must be Hispanic, but he's not. Well, actually, he is.
That's where
Italians are Latinos. Italians are Latinos. Everywhere in the world except America, Italians are Latinos. Isn't that insane? America is such a screwed up country. But he does look Latino. But people think, oh, he's Hispanic, but it's not. He's Italian. That's the reason when he died, they lit the Colosseum up in purple light in honor of him, because the Italians think of him as one of their own, which is nice, which is very nice. Anyway, so thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this talk on Marilyn and just the many things about Marilyn that people might not have known. And it's an easy relief that she was controlled. It's sad. Her life was sad being controlled. And she wouldn't have died if she hadn't been controlling people, but she didn't take her own life. And the Kennedys didn't use her. But JFK slept with her once, yes. But she wasn't used or killed by the Kennedys. I suppose JFK probably did use her. Used her once. But they said they had women coming in the front door and going out the back. He said that you had to have 8 times a day so you can have virility to get your work done. But that was because he had Dr. Feelgood, and a lot of actors of that time had Dr. Feelgood coming to them. But he had Addison's disease, so he was in a lot of pain. And the stuff they were injecting him with was actually making him his libido. Yeah. His libido was so high, it was artificially high. His father told all his sons, you're a man. If you could, the more women you sleep with, the more of a man you are.
Kennedy family values.
Yeah, Irish family values. Yeah, and the whiskey company had money in, and Gloria Swanson was Joe Kennedy's, the father's mistress, and Rose Kennedy knew about that. But Yeah, it probably, and they said that if he had lived, because he had the Addison's disease and the drugs that Dr. Feelgood was giving him, he would have lost his mind. So his second term would have been so awful that the man would have had a horrible reputation throughout history. It's horrible that he died. You kind of wish that Dr. Feelgood kind of left the building. I mean, somebody saved him from Dr. Feelgood, so he would have had Addison's disease. That would have been made him sicker and sicker. He might not have been able to continue to do his job, but at least he wouldn't have left because his mind went because of the drugs. Sad, very, very sad, but that is the truth. Because I studied up on that too. Anyway, it's interesting when you find out the truth. And they say Jackie did get Dr. Feelgood too, but I can imagine why she did. Her husband was sleeping around a lot, and I think that probably broke her heart a bit. So sometimes people take drugs to numb things away, numb pain away.
I feel like we're doing like an Andy Warhol painting all stars here.
It is. Yeah. Andy Warhol. It's kind of, well, notice how everything kind of connects. Everything kind of connects.
Yeah.
But the main point is how these people really died. That it wasn't suicide, it was a murder. But in a way, it was by the people who controlled her, especially her psychiatrist, who was the pivotal and crazy. And he believed in the Keynesian theory, the Keynesian thing, the whole section. He was messed up freak.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, that was a slow murder. That was, in a way, it was, because he was so insane and so controlling. But it wasn't the Kennedys, and she didn't commit suicide, and she did fire him. She fired all of them. Of course, Joe DiMaggio would eventually have broken her down, but she might have said, "I'm not going to take this anymore." And she turned one corner to get rid of those controlling people. Then maybe when he started to be abusive to her, she might have said, "Hold on, no more." We'll button this with Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner, when he started Playboy, he bought all the pictures, her first nude photo session, which she was lying on red silk. And when they asked her about it, because they figured it was like a cheesecake calendar that men all across the country bought, and it was hanging in gas stations all over the country. And nobody knew who she was, and her hair was still kind of red at the time, but it was very long. And it wasn't airbrushed yet. And my friend Vinny, Vinny, his grandfather has a copy of that, a certified original, before it was taken, before Playboy took it and airbrushed it to make her look a little more perfect, her body.
Yeah.
He's got the original, which is the original. And Vinny said, there's nothing wrong with her.
Yeah.
Doesn't need the airbrush. But that's what they did. But she was the first centerfold. And funny thing to note, because Hugh Hefner, he got the pictures from his brother, got them from somewhere, and they bought them. But Hugh Hefner never met Marilyn, ever. Never met her his entire life. He said he talked to her once on the telephone. And what he did was, when she died, he bought the crypt next to her, because she's in a high-rise crypt. It's like a kind of, it's not a building, but it's like a small building with the one on top of the other, and there are numbered in the name.
Is it a Forest Lawn Cemetery?
I think so. So he bought it for $75,000, which was a lot then. But so he said, I'll spend eternity next to Marilyn. And the person above her, Norman Mailer was obsessed with her and thought her name, Marilyn Monroe, was like a anagram of Norman Mailer. He bought the one on top of her and insisted that he was lying face down, like he was actually having relations with her, because she was up lying this way, like everybody else when they put them in the crypt, and he was lying face down, like as if he was having sex with her.
Wait, Norman Mailer is on top of her?
Yeah, I believe it was Norman Mailer. Yeah.
Okay.
I know he's gay, but it's there's an obsession.
Yeah.
With Marilyn. You know what I mean? So for eternity, he's making love to Marilyn because he believes that he is Marilyn, like they were one person.
Yeah.
The names are the same, and they were. Because I read his book on Marilyn and what he believed he was and who they were to each other, which is kind of crazy. But it's in the closet, and there's too much dust. It's on the bottom there. But yeah, it's amazing when you read when somebody really writes the truth, what their brain is thinking. You know, their mind goes all over the place.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting fact. But I'd suggest never looking at her autopsy photo because I didn't realize how they did autopsies. But she wasn't good looking at all after they did that because they do something to the face, and then. It's horrific. I say never watch it. Ask somebody what they do in an autopsy, but don't look at the photograph ever. How horrible did they do? Why do that? She's why when you go to visit, when you go to funeral homes, they don't look at all. It's because they do something to the face, and I don't want to go into it. And horrible. What's the point of that? I don't see where doing that would tell you anything, honestly, when you find out what it is and find out on your own. To me, it doesn't even make any sense.
You're talking about the medical techniques of 50
the forensic, the autopsy. It was a procedure of the autopsy. It's like, don't do that to me. Just, make sure the thing doesn't explode and bomb me, but don't do that to me. Anyway, so we love you, Marilyn. In California time, you're still alive. That's right. But we love you, and you were.
Can we acknowledge Ian Randall here? Ian Randall.
Ian Randall, that's right. Looked like Marilyn. She stopped 3 indoor soccer teams when she walked in. The ball literally just went where it was going.
Well, props to you, man.
Wow. Christianity is expanding in China, Indonesia, and Iran.
Yeah, I hope there's a Christianized China.
Well, actually, I heard many years ago, maybe 10 years ago or more, that I was talking to somebody who was born again Christian, and they said that because it's disappearing here, and they said it's exploding in China.
Yeah.
There's all these underground churches.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would be wonderful if China changed over. Stop killing the dogs and to stop slaving the children and and what you're doing to the Uyghur Muslims. And the pandas you can keep. And feminism can still be against the law because we see what it did to this country.
Yeah, well, we'll have a new system where pandas to each according to their need. I think you need.
It would be a whole house full. I even like them when they're big. You ever see the pandas when they can hold their own bottle when they're babies? They can hold they have hands. They can hold the bottle. It's cuter than hands.
Yeah.
But they hold their bottle and they're sucking off of it, and then you give them a big carrot or pumpkin. And they eat it, they hold it, and they take bites out of it. They chop. It's the cutest damn thing in the world. And they try to walk too. It's like they'd be better than humans. They'd definitely be better than humans.
I like how otters eat.
Otters are so cool. Yeah, that's right. They put their all the way, and they make these cute squeaking sounds. They're so cute. But otters and pandas otters are related to dogs and cats. I know pandas are related to dogs, but otters are related to dogs.
No, they're what you call feliform. It's convergent evolution, if you'll believe that. But yeah. Mm-hmm. It's that, why do otters and walruses have whiskers and look kind of like cats? Well, apparently, evolutionarily speaking, they're on two completely different paths, but they converge into a feline.
But dogs, they're related to dogs too. Like
they're not related. There's no blood relation, but they. Well, I mean, as far as being mammals, yes.
Well, but, they say that they are related. Well, science says that they're related.
Oh well,
and they, like seals, they belong to the same group. Dogs. And you can see when you look at them. Gee, these seals look like dogs.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But there was no point at which a cat crawled back to the sea. That never happened.
Oh no! That it didn't go that way. It somehow, something broke off, and
Well,
one evolved this way, another one evolved that way.
Talk to inspiring philosophy about structuralism, but it explains things like convergent evolution and why things end up sort of looking alike, even though they not directly related. Ian, okay, so since we're talking about celebrity oddities here, Ian Randall was talking about in the 80s. I had a ponytail, wore a suit, and went to the Violent Femmes concert in the 80s. Well, I didn't understand until recently is that the Violent Femmes are Christian, or at least their lead singer is and always has been a Christian.
Yeah, you heard weird stuff about all these rock groups.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, whatchamacallit, Gene Simmons is from Israel.
Yeah.
And there's a Christian in the group. Is it Peter Criss?
I don't know anything about that.
You don't know that? Yeah, I think Peter Criss is a Christian. And I think they kind of had a falling out, going into different directions. But Gene Simmons, God love him. I mean, he loves America.
Yeah.
He voted Republican. He's so blessed and happy to live in this country. He learned American, and he said to live in this country, you have to learn it. To get ahead, you have to learn American. Yeah. And so it's like, God bless. He said his tongue is 7.5 inches long.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
No. You know how he sticks it out and then he plays the guitar with his tongue? It's not attractive. Okay. I mean, it isn't. It's a turnoff. If anything, it's a turnoff. And he might get COVID that way. Yeah. Be very careful where you put your tongue.
Well, he seems hale and hearty.
But he's smart. Yeah, he
said why he never did drugs, because he said his dad told him, I mean, you were born in America. You've been given the greatest gift. If you start taking drugs, you're just throwing it all away. Yeah.
Oh, they were smart. They were teachers, and they decided basically. I think most of the group is Jewish, and they decided to say, how do we make money? Like put together. So it's like it's the endeavor is not rock. It's to make money or to
and get laid.
And appeal to a certain age group, like adolescent boys. Like Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap took a little from all the rock groups. It's just kind of neat because when you see, they got that from people, and they got that from Black Sabbath or whatever, Ozzy Osbourne. Like they took little bits of genius. Well, we should probably wrap it up unless there's something else you'd like to say.
Please join us on August 16th for the
15th.
15th.
Okay. The candlelight visuals on the 15th because he dies on the 16th. So the night before is the candlelight vigil.
Okay.
Because you do it, the vigil is Elvis at this moment, 1977 was still alive. So you're savoring that moment and then till he dies. Yeah. But yeah, there's going to be a whole. In fact, I'd like you to get the book. Actually, I can't afford to buy it and send it to you because I have no money. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I owe the city. I mean, taxes, and I cannot pay for it. So it's like, I sent you something though, but it would be great if you bought the book so you could read it, because there'll be things that I remember and that you remember, or I'll say, I'll take this chapter, you take that chapter. You know what I mean? We could kind of like trade off, if you wanted to do that, if you were generous and kind-hearted, but I guess you're not, because you're not saying yes.
Well, David hopefully will be there too when he's.
Yeah, but he's not. Is he going to read the book?
He's very knowledgeable.
He's knowledgeable, but he needs to read the book. The book has got all this stuff in it. It's all new stuff. It just came out this year. It's all. I was going to talk about it on his birthday, but my father died on it. My father died on Elvis's birthday and my mother's birthday, and so they all met Elvis in heaven, and that's good. But that's why I didn't do anything on January 8th. But this, it's the book. It's the whole thing flips Elvis's death on its head. Mm-hmm. But this is the truth. So it would be helpful. Otherwise, I would have to remember everything. And I do a good job at remembering a lot of things. There'll just be still things that you could read and have a different perspective on. Be coming at, and make sure that it's said too. Because if I don't say it, you say it, or I read a certain chapter and then you read another chapter. You know what I mean? They're like, I'll take half the book and you'll take the other half of the book. That way, we don't have to read the whole book. You know what I mean? I think there's clever ways.
I think it's the scriptural rosary. It's like, and then he went.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, I start the paragraph and you finish the paragraph. Or David could take a third of the book. You take a third. I'll take a third. Well, I'll take a third. It's just that I can't afford to send you. I don't have a dime. I mean, I don't know what to do. I'll never be.
Convince this woman to start some sort of online crowdfunding, please.
Yeah. I'll become a hooker. I mean, I need good money. Otherwise, there's no way. I can't do it. There's no way.
Just start an OnlyFans. Come on.
It's we're talking. I run out of money in the middle of a month, and that's not when I'm saving for taxes. If I'm saving for taxes, I have no money for anything. 100% goes to taxes. That's how bad it is. So anyway, I hope did my voice come out clear?
Yeah, well, okay, so you look and sound. I mean, not you. You're radiant as always, but the video feed is so much better than it was when you started out. So I think maybe you should enter the studio like 90 minutes before you go live just to warm the thing up, because the video now is so much better than it was when you started the stream.
Oh, really? So the picture, everything, it could be because it's just my Wi-Fi is online and offline. It's my Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And ever since I had Wi-Fi, it's never been good. And it's better now than when I had Verizon. I've got cable. Cable's stronger, but it's not. It drops all the time. And
I think it warms up. I think you have to let it warm up. So start going to the studio.
No, I actually use it all day long, and it drops all day. This is not just fresh. I use the all day long, and it just drops. It's constantly dropping, and I have to find something else I can hook onto, and that doesn't work. It's just a mess. I think there's something wrong with the connection, but they never want to come out to check out the wall. There's a connection in the wall. Something isn't connected. I know, it's me. It's a loose connection. But I've had this problem. It's a little bit stronger with having it run through the cable. But it's still dropping all the time. So, yeah. So I try my hardest, and this is a 21-year-old computer. Well, anyway, please, yeah, join us the night of August 15th. Maybe we'll probably start the same 9 or 9:30. We could start later, but I don't know. I'm not sure how long it's going to run, because it's a lot of interesting information that's just going to turn everything on its head about Elvis, and it's factual. It's well researched, factual about his whole family. You know, the author researched his entire family going back many generations, and she discovered a lot of things. And basically, that's what's going to turn his death on its head. And no, he's not one. He did not die of drugs, and that's the amazing thing. He didn't die of drugs. Little do people realize. But we're going to find out everything on August 15th, the evening of August 15th.
Ian Randall is saying, give me GMT time, please. Well, I made a mistake when I was scheduling with Fabulous Agnostic. I said it was 5 hours difference. He was 6 hours difference. So, yeah, please consult your map or atlas. Look to the stars. You can observe the changing of the seasons, and you could get the correct time for the Elvis stream.
Oh, Wi-Fi short distance wireless link. Try plugging your PC directly into the router. They plugged it in the room where the TV was, because I don't have cable TV anymore, and it's connected to the telephone, so it's across the house, to the other end of the house, and it would be a whole. I would have to really put a setup in there, and if I did that, the room would no longer be a room that you could like watch TV. It's where it is for a reason, and I don't think I can get, unless if I know how much it's going to cost, but maybe the cable company can run another router over here. If they can, that would be great. Well, I'll ask them. So thank you for bringing that up. Let me see if I'll say, well, Ian Randall says you can do it. Well, they'll say, if Ian Randall says that we can do it, by gum, we'll do it. Oh, boy. So he says that's the center of his profile pic is the center of the solar system or something.
Oh, yeah.
So a 30M cable costs about 30. So I would have to have a cable running from the router here. Is that what you're saying? He's not asking.
A Ouija board.
Because he's got a 30M cable costs about $30. Okay. So do I buy a cable and run it across the house to this room? Maybe he fell asleep. Anyway, if you aren't sleeping, join us on the 15th. Unfortunately, David's coming on Saturday, and we're doing Mothman. Mothman is the show for Saturday.
Randall said yes.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty. So join us.
Into outer space.
And so join us for Saturday, and when David's on, the expert on Mothman, and that should be really, really fun. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you so much, Ian. You are fantastic. Everybody who joined us, everybody who watched this in a rerun, thank you very much for watching to the end. A lot of information here about a host of stars, you know, like the pick of the crop, basically the ones that are on the top of the top shelf.
Back when stars were stars.
Back when stars were stars. Yeah, Cary Grant. Or there's a list of stars. They did like some magazine figured out who was the ultimate Hollywood star that epitomized Hollywood and the ultimate star. And I think Tom Cruise was number 3. Marilyn was like 5 or something. But you know who was number 1? And I do not argue with this. It was Cary Grant. Because Cary Grant created the character of Cary Grant. His name was Archibald Leach. He was born in the poor section of England, completely impoverished. I guess when Liverpool was really Liverpool, was the dregs, poor further back than the Beatles. Yeah, I mean, this is, he was born 1910 or 1919, some kind of early part of the century. So he was really poor, and his mother disappeared when he was born, and his father told him his whole life until he left for America that his mother died at birth. And then he found out that the father wanted to get rid of her. He didn't want to marry her anymore because you couldn't divorce. He stuck her in an insane asylum. So and he told Cary upon his death. He waited until his death to tell Archibald Leach. His name was, can you imagine, the most gorgeous man that's ever lived? But outside of Rob, his name was Archibald Leach. So what he did was, beautiful thing. He went, he found his mother. He bought her a mansion, and he had security and protection, and he made sure not one reporter, nobody would bother her or ask her a question, because he didn't want anybody to know. The woman spent her life in an insane asylum. She couldn't handle anybody asking her questions, and he treated her like a queen for the rest of her life. Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
It's such, and you don't know this about, and he thought he did it when LSD was experimental. The psychiatrists were giving it to their patients, and he kept going to psychiatrists with his wife saying, "Why can't I keep my marriage together?" He wanted to keep a marriage together. He wanted to have a family. When he came over here, he lived in Atlantic City. He did tricks like juggling, all sorts of tricks to earn a little money on the boardwalk. And then he got into Hollywood, and they said, well, remember Clark Gable, CG, that worked for Clark Gable. We're going to have to change your name. What about Cary Grant? There was a Grant department store. I was like, how does your business run? Well, it's Cash and Carry. Carry's a nice name. Oh, at what store? Grant's department. Okay, Cary Grant. Oh, sometimes those things are put together. Mm-hmm. Marilyn's name was put together by 2 streets, Mary and Lynn. Somebody's mother grew up on those streets, and so that's how they put her name together. And so there must be a story on how they put Cary Grant's name together from Archibald Leach. But he spoke like that. You thought he was an aristocrat. But he really spoke with a Cockney accent. He put on the character of Cary Grant. And that's who they say off stage and on stage. That's who if you met Cary Grant, the person on stage is the person you met off stage. He was just as nice and just as gentlemanly. He went, there's a story that he went to an awards show, and he was going to get a Lifetime Achievement Award. And you go walking in without a ticket, and the guy at the door says, you have no ticket. He goes, I'm Cary Grant. And the guy says, you don't look like Cary Grant. And he goes, nobody does. I
Was it the famous Betty Davis? The famous Betty Davis quote. Even I don't look like Betty Davis.
Oh God, he said something. He said something else that was funny. I forget what it is now.
So what was the thing about LSD?
Well, he was in the 50s. He married Diane Cannon in the early 70s. He had his only child with Diane Cannon. But LSD, they were prescribing it to psychiatrists because it was an experimental drug that they thought would help with mental disorders, anxiety, unable, I don't know, having, I could imagine the life that he lived was, he hopped a boat to get here and then made his life at Coney Island doing tricks on the boardwalk, juggling anything, the shell trick, anything to earn a little money. And so he thought, his life, what his father did to his mother, that kind of experience is kind of, I can imagine the father might have been very abusive to him. He wasn't a nice guy. So it could be that he had trouble staying married because he had a very dysfunctional, no mother and an abusive father, very dysfunctional life. So he went to a psychiatrist with his wife, and the psychiatrists in the 50s were prescribing LSD to fix psychological issues. So it wasn't an illegal drug then. It wasn't like what it became in the 60s when they realized it didn't do anything. It didn't help everyone or anyone out of anything, but except, except the hippies. So that's an interesting little thing about Cary Grant. And nobody could wear a suit. That man's figure. What a beautiful figure. Even my mother goes, look at that figure. Look at where he wears that coat. God. Even my father loved him. He goes, he loved Fair to Remember because he loved Deborah Kerr. Deborah Kerr was his beautiful story. And he had to always watch that movie over and over and over again. So it was beautiful. It's really beautifully done. But if you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie with Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr. It really makes you cry. You do cry at the end. Even though it's one of those 50s movies, you do cry at the end. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful love story. But anyway, so we that's it. We've hit Hollywood royalty, and the greatest thing, Cary Grant, because he created Cary. He turned himself around and made himself as if he was educated, and he had a fine life. He didn't have the life that he really did have. You thought he was an aristocrat, and so we can come out of ourselves and we can better ourselves. And no matter what experience we've had in our lives, no matter how hard our life can be, we can turn it around and become something else or become something better. And he was his best self on and off the screen. He was a very nice man. Anyway, join us on the 15th, but join us Saturday night. That'd be 9 or 9:30. David will be on talking about Mothman. Maybe the DA here will be on as well.
Perhaps.
We don't know what he's going to be doing. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's got stuff to do with that day. But maybe. So maybe you'll be seeing his beautiful face again. So then after that, we'll do well. I think that comes in the middle of the next week, or is it? Oh, Sunday. I think it's on a Sunday, the 15th. Yeah. But anyway. So the next 2 weekends we're jam packed, and I might add another show. Maybe I'll add a paranormal show and the Elvis show, since the 15th I think is on a Sunday night. Mm-hmm. So anyway, good night, everyone. God bless you. God love you, and have a wonderful, wonderful, happy day. So many reasons to live. The true story of Marilyn is a story of really in the end, things turned around for her. She didn't kill herself, and nobody murdered her. So that's good.
Teddy's like, I thought you already put a button on this. I want to go outside. Let me out.
I know Teddy's been barking. He's so cute.
Okay.
He's dancing around.
Have a good night, guys. God bless.
Yeah, God bless everyone. So I will end the stream now with a God bless you, and I love you, and thank you for being here.